You scared of me? Oh, I'm scared of myself. Oh, Lord.
Come on. I don't think so. I'm not
Hello,
on there, man.
James.
Hey.
Hey, buddy.
Am I on? Y'all hear me?
We are on. Here we go. Are we ready? Here we go. Can you hear us in the back? Testing, Matt. Testing, Kathy. Testing, Katie. Testing, the doctor that just walked in.
Okay, we're going to get started, and I'm going to do some quick introductions, but I want to kind of tell you how this came about. And I'm sure Michele will disagree or tell me if I say anything that's not in line. But you guys are wondering how these two got up on stage. How do we come to this? Chattanooga Speaks, a lot of you came out last quarter and heard Michele. Now, what you don't know are the conversations that led up to getting Michele here for that event. When we called and asked Michele to do Chattanooga Speaks, she was like, why? Why do you want me to do this? And we told her, everything you blog about, everything you type about, write about, it's time to share that with the community. If you don't know, Michele, I call her a serial entrepreneur. She's a force to be reckoned with in the business field, but now it's time for her to take that voice and put it out here. But she is the least likely person that you would see up here because this is not where she's comfortable. Am I right, Michele?
That is correct.
So tonight, for somebody who is a taskmaster like me, she basically gave me about a week to plan. And that's stretching it.
Maybe 4 days.
Maybe 4 days, thank you. However, this is practice tonight. What I want you to walk away with, James Chapman and Michele are going to do their own introductions. We are not formal. We need you to engage. This is a pilot. This is her test. But frankly speaking, can be something in the future for this community. Some of you here tonight have things you need to share. This will be the first night we start this series. So again, it's informal, engage, ask questions, jump in, and please disagree with her tonight. Okay? So I want to say thank you to James and Michele. We're going to go ahead and get started. Michele, I'm going to who would you like to start and open up with their story?
I'll start since
Okay.
I invited James.
Thank you.
Okay? So most of the people here actually know me, and I just want to thank you all for coming out. I am deeply honored that people actually care what I have to say who hang out with me as much as you all do. And so the goal here and the reason why I am sitting here is because, and I wanted to kind of surprise James with this, is I watched James' TED Talk, and he actually put out a calling for entrepreneurs to step forward in the community and talk about their experiences. And oftentimes as a business person, and I have been a serial entrepreneur since I was 12 years old, I did a paper route in Johnson City, Tennessee, in a little neighborhood called Garland Acres. And as I said in some of the writings that I put on Facebook, it was a community of people who were coming and going. There weren't a lot of middle ground people there. They were either very old or very young. And so one of the things that I got to see very early on was the struggle of the young and the struggle of the old. And so when James put that calling out that we need people to share our stories, we need people to share their experiences. And so something that just, is very passionate in my mind, leading up to this point, I have been sharing with mostly friends. So this is the evening where I essentially go public with my concern and my concern of marketplace. And one of the things that's interesting in our country right now is that you have to either have a lot of institutional help or you have to have a lot of money. And so I don't have a lot of money. And so I thought, I have some money and I have made a career at speaking individually with families. So some of you that may not know me, I own a home elevator company. I started my first company when I was 23 years old. A gentleman in Chattanooga had the foresight to see something in me. I had waited on him, so I waited tables here in Chattanooga. I went to UTC. I came here to play basketball. That didn't really work out for me, and I had to pay for college. And my parents were probably, my dad always said, we're 2 months from homeless. So we were doing better than some. And so basically, one of the objectives of my life has been that I like to be a problem solver. I like solutions-oriented people. So when I spoke at Chattanooga Speaks the first time, one of the things that people came up and they made me feel better about myself as far as a public speaker goes, because they said, I mean, people were coming up to me saying things like, wow, you honed in on some points and you said some things. And up to that point, I had really been sharing a lot of my business acumen and just my overall morality on Facebook. And so at that point, people were like, why are you writing all these long stories on Facebook and there doesn't seem to be an objective? So tonight, there is an objective, which is to take on a topic that to let you all know, I haven't even given James the opportunity to really spend a lot of time researching this topic, because he is someone that I think has the understanding that if we communicate with one another in a respectful way, and if we can go out there and bring up a topic and have no predisposition on what we're supposed to say, and there is no agenda for what we're going to next, then quite possibly, organically, we can come to something that can become a solution to something that I see as an exploitation. And so if that makes sense, that's the long way around what I see in college football today. And so for me, that's a marketplace as a female that I watch, and I read all of the business news online that you can get, and I see these contracts after contracts after contracts, these media deals after media deals after media deals being inked, and I see two sides of that issue. And so one of the things I wanted to bring up with James, because he did the calling on the entrepreneur side, is could I have a conversation with him unprepared where he would maybe enlighten me on what it was like for him and what he sees, and could I make some points to him so that we could maybe start a dialogue of how the system as a whole, when it comes to big-time college sports, and James played at a small West Virginia university, and that's the little bit of research that I've done on James, and I just want him to know that I am answering his calling, and that came via Donna inviting me to Chattanooga Speaks, and I do business all over the country, and so I just wanted to start dialoguing this conversation. That's it.
Y'all hear me now? Okay, cool. So, can we? This is a church. We can't curse in here, right? No, there's no cursing. I won't curse just because I don't know the rules on that necessarily. We can't. Okay.
I enjoy cursing, James.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes
it makes me feel better about things.
No, I actually don't drink beer. If you got whiskey, I'll take that. But
I will bring the whiskey the next time we get together. Yes.
Cool. So sometimes I curse just to drive points home better. I feel like, I don't know, it gives it more emphasis. When I was first approached for this, she's right. I didn't know a whole lot about it, and I still don't. I don't know what the hell, I'm supposed to be talking about here. But I actually, whenever I do speaking engagements, I do better when I don't really prepare much. Because I feel like the things that I have to say are more authentic, they're more heartfelt, and things of that nature. I'm not trying to recite something that I prepared. So in that case, I do kind of appreciate it. And in the other hand, I probably want to choke her a little bit. But regardless,
you just met me, James. Just wait.
I've heard things. But but regardless, I am glad to be here with you guys today. I feel really, really honored and blessed to know that because of a TED Talk that I gave last year, I have received some really positive feedback about that. But I never knew that she watched my talk and that she was, led to kind of give her story more on a public platform because of my talk. And so that's really humbling to know, and I appreciate it. I'm glad that you watched it. My name is James Chapman. I'm born and raised here in Chattanooga. I've been here all my life. We were raised, my family came from Maurice Paz Homes. That closed down. We moved to East Lake Courts. My mom had me and my sister. My dad left when I was 8. Grew up kind of rough. Had a lot of family issues, with, just different family members in and out of jail and legal troubles and that kind of stuff. And so grew up in a little bit of a chaotic atmosphere. But my mom was a real champion with getting my sister and I into a really good school and getting us out of that type of setting. So graduated from CSAS. I don't know if there's any CSAS grads in the house, but if so, go Patriots. And then after that, I got a basketball scholarship to play ball at Bluefield College, which is what she mentioned earlier, a little small school in Bluefield, Virginia, right on the border of Virginia, West Virginia, actually. And so majored in communications and marketing. Didn't know really what that meant or what I was going to do, but I kept playing ball after school, went on to play down in Mexico. Got paid for that, and then went to the NBA Development League, which is kind of like minor league baseball. Played in that for a little while, then got cut. They sent me home. I just decided to walk away from sports at that point with no real direction of what I was going to do in life. Was fortunate enough to land a gig working for the Southeast Tennessee Development District, a really good organization that taught me a lot of skills around economic development, workforce development, housing development, things of that nature. And being around some of those folks really nurtured me as a young professional. Was named 2013 Young Professional of the Year by YPAC. And then I decided to quit my gig working at the development district because I had this idea to start a mobile oil change company. And so I just hated going to get my oil changed. And so I thought about the idea one day and decided to start it. So been running my mobile oil change company business for about 1.5 years. We contract out with certified mechanics to go out and do appointments for people while they're at home or work, or if you have a fleet of vehicles, I send mechanics out to do oil changes on site. And currently we are, first 1.5 years was proof of concept, and now we're rebranding and getting ready to scale on a more national level using some technology and that kind of stuff. I'll be really heavily involved with Startup Week and the Investor Summit, trying to raise funds for that. I also was brought in with Causeway as entrepreneur in residence to help social entrepreneurs get their idea off the ground. And been with them for a little over a year now. And so that's kind of how I spend the majority of my time, is either running my business or working with, traditional and social entrepreneurs. And of course I do some speaking engagements and things of that nature. So I stay really busy. I try to do a lot. I'm always up for a challenge. Like she said earlier, I love problems, and I love trying to solve problems and things of that nature. And so I think that's really drives me as an entrepreneur. But I just feel like oftentimes entrepreneurs are sought out as leaders, but they aren't community leaders as well as business leaders. And I believe that you should be both, just a little bit, just because I think we all have a civic duty, especially in a town like Chattanooga, where it's so, community focused and community based, that if you have the brains to solve problems in the business world, you definitely have the brains to solve problems from a civic and community aspect. And so that's kind of where my TED Talk came from, and challenging folks to be a stronger community. And so I'm here, and we're gonna have some discussion tonight. And from the little bit that was mentioned about the college athletes and that kind of thing, and some of the things that they go through, I'm sure that she's gonna run point a little bit on starting some of that conversation, and I do have some thoughts relative to that, and I hope that you all will chime in as well on your thoughts, and maybe that conversation will lead to other conversations and things of that nature. So we'll just kind of see how the night goes. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you guys decided to bring me in.
So James and I just met tonight. So like most people who meet me originally, or anybody that meets someone that they don't know, they usually do what we just did, which is we make formality and see what our common thread is, right? So we go past formal, hey, how you doing? And then we see, do we know anybody who knows anybody? And that's very common. So when I moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1988, I lived at the Robert E. Lee over off of High Street. And
I live there now.
No way.
I live in the Robert E. Lee building right now.
I lived in the Robert E. Lee building. I lived in the Robert E. Lee building at least 3 times. I moved out and moved back in. I got to know George Elder. I got to know a lot of people in town because I wanted to live around downtown. And there was a restaurant over in North Chattanooga called Papa's. And it seemed like everybody in Riverview went there. And so I got to know a lot of people. And that's how I got started in life, in my Chattanooga life. I got to see a lot of the interdisbursements of families. I got to hear a lot of how there's this interconnectedness. And so at some point, I got hired to do elevators. And then 3 months later, a guy that I had waited on offered me $35,000 and said, you've only got to give me this much back as you go into business for elevators. Or at that time, ADA had just passed, and so everybody was out for the institutional money, and that's the wheelchair lifts and the other things that are in churches and schools. And I said to my parents, I'm going to start an elevator business. And they said, didn't we just give you $200 for rent? And I said, yes, you did, but there's this guy that he has offered to kind of front me in this. So I want to bring that full circle because I've sold about $50 million worth of products since that guy gave me that money. And I have extended that, and Burton Nance is here, and he works in one of my elevator business. Burton, you didn't have to come, but I appreciate you coming. And so when James did that calling, and I've done business all over the country now. I specialize in home elevators. And one of the things that happens to someone as they're, and I'm kind of emotional today, so I don't know, I'm glad friends are here. But if you're listening to this, stick with it if I start to get a little bit trembly if it's Saturday afternoon and you hear this, because I'm kind of talking to people out there that chose not to come today. And one of the things that we forget as you get into business and you get in the day-to-day operations is, why am I doing this? And it can't possibly be all about the money. It cannot possibly be all about the money. And so one of the things that happened to me is I got kind of a reality check. I had had the ebb and flows of business that happens when we get into it. And so I had an opportunity to decide whether I was going to be one of them or whether I was going to be me. And I've written a lot about that on Facebook, but I don't seem to be writing directly. So let me be very direct. I had a moment in my life where I had to decide whether I was going to hide or whether I was going to move forward on opportunity and not on fear. And so at that point, because when you do business like I've done in a long time, there's been a lot of mistakes that have been made and a lot of forgiveness has been given. And one of the things that happens is you begin to hide from who you used to be in order to not discuss anything that you've done wrong. And so what happens is you lose sight of the genuineness of yourself. And so for me, in 2012, I was either going to go batshit crazy or I was going to start speaking about the things that bothered me. And so like I told people here, I am not going to have one friend left if I don't start talking about this publicly. because I've been speaking about this with friends, and it's just unfair to them to always get around me and listen to me talk about the exploitation of mostly young men in the SEC conference, and the fact that I can see what is cyclical. So what we want to talk about, and what I would like to talk about with James, is the overall understanding that there are only two ways to finance a business in this country, and I want to extend that. There are only two ways to finance a family in this country, and that is through debt or equity. And so families with money, they run the risk of spoiling their children to the degree that they have no control over the overexuberance of the lack of humbleness that the rich family has. And then the poor family has to go out and basically operate off of debt. Or in these guys, or any female or male, black, white, doesn't matter. One of the things that my family instituted in me is get a scholarship. Get a scholarship. That is the only way that you will be able to go into the public arena. And somebody in this country coined this phrase, redistribution of wealth. The only way to truly redistribute wealth in this country is through education. That is the only way that you can do it, other than the marketplace. But one usually comes before the other in terms of that way. So one of the things that I wanted to ask James, when he was playing basketball, was there an overall effect of you would work your butt off, you would then get a scholarship? Were you shooting for a Division I originally because you saw that as the catapult into a paying job, that you could be paid for your sweat equity at that point?
Yeah, so when I was in high school and even just growing up, I always wanted to go to the NBA. I thought I was good at basketball. I thought I was good enough to go to the NBA. I mean, a lot of, that's what kids are. And I always wanted to go to the University of North Carolina because I thought, all right, if I play for UNC, there's no way that I can't get into the NBA. Because all the guys, back in that era when I was in high school, I mean, everybody who played for North Carolina went to the NBA, right? And so, yeah, that's what I strive for. I strive to get a Division I scholarship so that I could then get a job as a professional athlete afterwards. It wasn't until, I started getting a little bit closer to my senior year and junior year and that kind of stuff where I realized that, all right, some of my accolades as an athlete isn't really matching up to some of the other guys across the nation. I may have to look at, another route, playing at a smaller school and that kind of stuff. And then once I did play at a smaller school, I decided I wanted to play overseas. And
where the money, a little bit of money is.
Yeah, where a little bit of money is. So, like, if you guys aren't familiar with international basketball, international sports, what they'll do is they'll pay you, the money's tax-free, they pay for all of your housing, they'll pay for your food and that kind of stuff. The contracts aren't the same as the NBA. The money isn't as good as the NBA, but it's pretty good money because you're not having to pay for anything while you're over there and that kind of stuff.
That's right.
I actually recently, I have one of my best friends who was my teammate and roommate is still playing now. He just got back from Japan and recently went to Argentina. So he's the only one out of us that I think is still playing or whatever from my team or whatever. But that was always our goal once we knew that we were playing for a small school.
So James, and I don't know this, so everything is raw here. So James brings up the University of North Carolina. And I'm not an academic, but certainly in Johnson City, Tennessee, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill is a well-regarded school. So I'm going to talk about the disease right now. So basically, what for me, this started at obviously what happened at Penn State. That happened at the same time that I had my calling to return back to myself. I called it on Facebook, Happy Anniversary to Me, because I wanted to institute who I was from that point forward through truth. I wasn't going to hide from anything from anywhere that I had done where I had asked for forgiveness that someone might come back and say, well, we didn't give you all forgiveness. Or where I negotiated with the IRS when I was very young after my first company, and I was worried that people would think that was awful, and so I spent a lot of time strategically thinking, how can I get people to understand what it's like to be in the trenches if I don't tell them what it's like to be in the trenches? And then how are people going to respect me? And I take care of 26 families in my life. And whether they know that or not, that's the way I feel. So I have 26 families all over the country that I take care of because they make money at the pond that I create. And so what happened was you had Penn State come out and you saw this institutional greed that had morphed into this, if I use incorrect grammar all the time, so if you're out there and you're listening to this, just tell me there's no such thing as the word morphous. But for some reason, that sounds like the right thing to use here. And what happened to me during Penn State was I was appalled. And then you read about the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I mean, this is Dean Smith's school, a guy that brought people in and said, we aren't going to exploit you. We're going to educate you. We're going to teach you something so that you can go in the pond of commerce with the knowledge that will give you an advantage over the wild, wild west of most marketplaces around the world and certainly in the South. And so this is a guy that ultimately took it upon himself to tell people you have value. And that value is past what you can do for me as a coach. And that value is what I can do for you we can create this energy, but this is one of the best schools in the country. And then what happens? The news breaks that they have a deal. And they send these football players in that can't cut the grades. And basically they start cheating for them. Now who's the problem here? Is it the person allowing the cheater to cheat for them? Or is it the person doing the cheating? And what perception do you have? And so what I think the perception is, the player is letting someone cheat for them so that they can continue to play, because that's the barrier to entry to get to the NBA as a business model. You can't buy a license into the NBA. You can't buy your way in. You've got to earn your way in through your marketable equities, through the sweat as your asset, and you go and you start to market that. And so basically when I heard that, I was like, this again is something that I need to speak about from a business perspective, because this is not the way that it was supposed to be. These guys weren't supposed to be wearing Nike emblems where someone else was being privately paid for them to be labeled. They were supposed to be wearing UNC emblems. They were supposed to be there to get educated, to redistribute wealth in this country so that they would be smarter when they came out. And so that for me was the turning moment as well. That was the pinnacle of where I was in 2012, 2013. And so what I wonder is, looking back on it, and I honestly can say this, James, you were probably more fortunate that you didn't get that scholarship, which is a bartered, fixed cost, public to private marketplace, and you went to West Virginia, where maybe somebody there had enough time on their hands, because they weren't focused on what can you do for me. They were focused on, you're here to learn. And I don't know if that was your experience, but certainly I'd love to hear about your experience in West Virginia and what happened at the college level up there.
So, yeah, it's a totally different dynamic, right? When you play at a smaller school, any time that you play on a collegiate level that's not top D1, right? It's like two different worlds. When they brought us in, it was more so just to win games, right? They wanted to be a successful school. They wanted to win, and they wanted the players there to go on and be young professionals. Because statistically, when you play at a smaller school, you don't go to the NBA. You just don't, right? And so that wasn't even a focus. They aren't getting any endorsements from Nike and all of that kind of stuff. You know, Bluefield College doesn't get
They didn't even get free shoes.
Right? No,
We got free shoes at Science Hill. Reebok sent us free shoes. Even the women got free shoes.
None of that. And so you have to. You change your focus because you know who you are, right? That institution knows who they are, so they have different values now. And so now their focus is going to be, all right, we need to get the best players that we can in here so we can win games. Because, success, more people are going to want to be a part of a school that's successful, and that kind of thing. That's just obvious. But the other part is we want to make sure that our young men are student athletes. Right, and so the student comes before the athlete, from everywhere from the coaching staff, on up to the president of the school. That was their main focus, and so it's just a totally different dynamic. There was there were none of the pressures or the hype that you see in a big school. And we played against. I mentioned this in my TED Talk. We played against Auburn.
I know that.
My team, we were a small school, but we were very good, and so we got the opportunity to play Auburn and barely lost to those guys. But when you go there, you just see everything is just totally different from the way that the stadium is set up into the breaks or whatever. You get the TV timeouts and all that kind of. We didn't get TV timeouts, so we go up there and there's all these TV timeouts, and coach is like, "Are y'all tired?" We're like, "No, we feel good because we don't." There's a timeout every 3 minutes. You know what I mean? How can you be tired? And so the dynamic is totally different.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Auburn because I spent some time in Auburn, and in fact, actually, I don't know if this will ever come out, and I have been giving some thought because more people tend to show up if you are part of government. I know when the mayor was here the last time, there was a ton of people here. And I was amazed that it was like packed because I was like, why do people want to hear me? And then he walks down, it's because the mayor's here. And so one of the things that happened to me in Auburn when I played basketball during the summer of '87, and they asked me, because I guess I was a little bit of a peppermint patty and I always talked to everybody, is they asked me to come back and coach the next summer. And then we went to the Hungry Hunter, and we had too many wine coolers playing quarter ounce. And then here comes Chuck Barkley walking in the room. And I go in the bathroom, and I start passing out. And all the players, they take me back to this player's house. And they're taking good care of me because I vaguely remember my head hanging out the window throwing up. And one of the guards there, Helen Baruti, she probably wouldn't remember me from Adam, but she probably has this photograph somewhere. They started putting me in very sexual positions with a Shar-Pei. And so I've always thought, I wonder if that will ever come to light if I ever go and talk to somebody about.
I hope so.
Yeah, it was interesting. They have that dog right in my face, and they were that's when you really had to make an effort because they had to go to the Walgreens the next day and get that stuff printed. And I was so hungover the next day, I was like, and they're over there in this group, and it's everybody, all those players, all the basketball players from both Coach Champies, who was a great coach, great female coach. Everybody, if you know anything about Auburn, Coach Champy was second to none, second to Pat Summitt on the girls' side of the equation from a marketing and understanding the dynamic. And they were all over there, and Carol Ross, who was at the University of or at Auburn and then went on to go to the University of Florida to coach. So for me, that's what coaches were about, is they kind of came up and they were like, get it together, y'all, get it together. And they really, they were our leaders, And for me, when I read business story after business story after business story of these large institutions, primarily the SEC is getting the largest media contracts right now because they're breaking off. The negotiation is happening privately. You can watch the money moving around where the next thing you know, the SEC channel's going to come out. It probably is. I don't know everything about everything, but what I do know and what I do read is there is a lot of negotiation happening behind the scenes. And for me, it seems like nobody's actually standing up and talking about these kids that are doing the work.
Yeah.
They're the ones doing the work. Now think about that. Think about the fact that we have gotten to a place in society where basically we let these kids from grade school on think this is what this is about. And most people do not know, and I'm certain that James will help me with this, that these student athletes get one-year scholarships. You have to re-up when you get a scholarship. So if you get hurt, if you get something that happens to you other than what the society accepts, which is bad grades, bad participation, that kid didn't participate. He didn't help himself. She didn't help herself. But ultimately, the school has all the power. And I negotiate contracts every day. And the one thing that I know about contract law is consideration, right? That's the only thing I really know about. And there's a guy at Miller Martin that taught me about that when I ran at Chambliss and Bonner. And he said all contract law is based on consideration. So when these larger numbers started happening, I thought to myself, I'm at the point in my career where I can stand up and say, this is wrong. And then I heard James calling on the entrepreneur side, and I thought, well, what better opportunity to sit here and talk about this? So when you signed your contract, James, when you signed your scholarship, I know you went to a smaller school, but I don't know a lot about this. Did someone come to your house? I know the photographers didn't come like they do, or maybe they did. You tell me, what was it like when you signed that contract?
Yeah, mine was a little bit different. They came to my high school. So I was a high school standout in Chattanooga, and so I got some press, from Times Free Press and that kind of stuff. And the coach came to my high school, and I think we used
the coach from West Virginia.
Yeah. So he came down, and my high school coach was in there, and the principal came and that kind of stuff. We met in somebody's office, and they cleared the table, took a bunch of pictures, and my parents were there, and we signed a.
So it was a big deal. James going to college.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
And did you read the contract? Did you read the scholarship? Was there an attorney present?
No, that was not an attorney. No, I didn't have an attorney present when I signed.
You didn't have an attorney, but how long? I'm curious because I never got a scholarship. I came to UTC to earn my way, so I walked on, and then I got hurt, and then I was like, I'm done with basketball.
Yeah,
I'm gonna move into the marketplace.
Yeah, my parents looked at it, of course.
Okay.
And they were like.
Do you even remember how long it was? I'm just curious.
A couple pages.
I've been looking for a scholarship online, so I haven't found one of the bigger SEC scholarships.
Yeah, the NCAA has the clearinghouse, and so theirs is probably going to be a little bit different.
The NCAA has a clearinghouse.
Yeah, they have the clearinghouse, and so theirs is going to be probably a little bit different than ours, but ours was pretty standard. It told me how much I was getting, and what all it entailed, and what criteria I had to hold up on my end and that kind of stuff, in order to keep scholarship and all of that kind of thing. And my parents and we looked over it prior to that day. So we knew we were going to sign, right? That day was just for the press and stuff. And so they sent it to us, and then we reviewed it and that kind of stuff.
Have you looked at it since?
No.
So
not since I was 17 years old.
But they made you sign it every year, right? Did you stay there more than 1 year?
Yeah, I stayed there more than 1 year. I graduated from there, but I think I did. It's different, though. It wasn't the same contract. It was more like
it changed.
No, it was
or
more
an extension, like you agreed to this
right,
last year.
It's just the same, same thing kind of deal. Yeah, and then you signed that.
So basically, it was just an extension of the contract. So you didn't have to really. Honestly, it was just them saying, we'll continue to educate you.
Yep, and you'll continue to play
And that was the barter.
Yep.
You give us your sweat equity and your your athletic superiority, and then we'll give you an education.
Yep.
And then every year, but did your school, I don't know, did it fall under NCAA guidelines?
No, ours didn't. So I played for a school that's NAIA. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. So NAIA is like Covenant College, Tennessee Wesleyan College, for point of reference for some of the local ones here, Bryan College. I don't know if you heard of those guys. So yeah, we were NAIA, yeah.
And so they bartered that. And did they give you some sort of per diem? Like when you negotiate with employees, I'm not sure who here gets, do you get a monthly or weekly, or did you just get fed, housed?
Yeah, I mean, we got housing, and then we got to eat in the cafeteria. So I mean,
So you got to eat.
Yeah.
So the barter was in the 3 squares,
Yep.
and having the ability to still play basketball.
Yep.
And then quite possibly you probably had some sort of injury on the job, but injury on the court in your particular case.
Yeah.
Insurance that they paid.
Yep.
And then obviously they had other considerations
Yep.
on their side that they felt like they were giving you.
Yep.
And that trade was that you excelled on the court.
Yep.
And that you also kept your grades up.
Yep.
And for you, you had a lot of people that it sounds like had or came to you and made sure your grades were up.
Yeah.
Because you certainly are articulate, and I don't know what you sounded like prior to going to Bluefield. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
You know, but for me, what I'm curious of and what I keep asking people is think about this. Think about it in terms of elevators. You know, I get to enter the marketplace, and in the United States, other than 3 states, I can go to those ponds and I can fish at those ponds at any price that I think the marketplace can bear. That is an open marketplace, right? What the University of Tennessee and all the other SEC schools are getting is they are having the ability to fix their cost on the public side of it. So that means that you have, I mean, I'm going to break it down for you as if it was a house. You have a painter, you have a plumber, you have an electrician, you have the person who supplies the drywall, you have the person who supplies the studs. They get all of that at the same price. No one in that organization that's entering that house, that SEC house, can determine their value by their ability or by their negotiation, because that is a fixed house. But here's the part that bothers me. On the back end of that, the University of Tennessee can hire private organizations that they can go and they can negotiate deals that none of us know about. And so what happens there is you have public bartering happening at a fixed cost, and you have private deals happening behind closed doors. And the only way you're going to find out about it is through the transparency of who in the news is paying attention to this. And so for me, that seems wrong. And I don't have all the solutions, but I certainly know as a businesswoman that in certain states I have certain value, in other states I have other value, and certainly when I deal with a mechanic who knows how to do something and I'm negotiating with that mechanic and I'm taking the lead and offering him my pond, and I give him the rules of my pond, and I tell him the bait he can use, I tell him there are more fish over here, and if you're willing to travel you can make more money. I tell him all the things. In my instance, I don't have a female mechanic yet. I'm working on that, but I don't have one. But at this point, I tell that guy, this is what we can do together. And this is what I can do for you, because I have been here for a very long time. And so what I'm seeing is this application of thought process of free markets that everybody wants to talk about, but nobody wants to institute. And then everybody wants me to stay away from the race issue when I write. That's the first thing people who trust me say. And I don't use the N word. I actually say...
I'm glad.
Hold on. You might not be, you might be. I actually say the word nigger when I write what I write. Because the baseline for that, in my eyes, is that if you are not a racist, and there are no black people that are racist, then they can use that. But we as white people can't use that, because clearly the broad stroke of that canvas is all white people are racist. And it's inappropriate for a white person to use it, because there's no way you can take ownership. But here, and I'm gonna pass it to you here, James. Here's the funny thing about that. When I played basketball, all of my teammates were black in Johnson City. They all called me that. And my mother was like, you can't let them call you that. And I was like, I have no control over what they say. And frankly, I don't have enough confidence to tell them not to call me that. So I became very used to that word in my vernacular, but also understood that it was inappropriate. So here's what I'm going to swing to. The only thing that seems to be happening in the news for me is a white person says that, and the national news grabs it, and all they want to talk about is the word being used by someone who's not monetizing the word. They're not saying anything in a derogatory way, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But at the same point, if what we are watching is the exploitation of mostly African American people, but the only news we ever really pick up is who said that word today, then I don't know how I can't sit here and say that too is wrong. But I'm opening a discussion that goes much further, and I tend to do that, so you take it from here, James.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things there. One, as far as, okay, so I'll start with the word first, the N word. I think that for many years, back way before I was even thought of, from what I read in the history books, that word was used as a derogatory and an oppressive word, right? From whites to blacks or whatever, right? But I guess back in the, that word stems all the way back into the slavery days. From when I was growing up and brought into existence, that word was used a lot. I mean, because I've always grown up in urban neighborhoods around blacks, right? But when it's used, it's almost used as a term of endearment, as a term of relating to that person, that kind of thing. I don't know at what point the word got flipped on its head, and I guess I hear some people say, we've taken back ownership of the word. Whites can't say it, blacks can, that kind of stuff. I don't write those rules and those types of things. And I hear, the word used a lot, especially in music. And then, Drake may say it in one of his lines. And of course, if he does a concert and everybody in the stadium is white, they're not skipping the word when they're singing along, to the lyrics of Drake, right? They're just not. And so I think that it's gonna have to come down to the person, right? I get offended by it if I hear a white person say that word, right? Because it doesn't feel right. I have goosebumps on the back of my neck where it feels derogatory and oppressive because of the things that I've learned and read in history books, and I know where it stemmed from. If I have somebody who I'm familiar with that's in my family that may say it and not even calling me that, but saying, man, this word or that, you know what I mean? There's no bother there. Do I have any rhyme or reason to justify it? No. There's a lot of things in life I don't have any rhyme or reason to justify it, but I know how things make me feel. And so I think that's the best way that I can describe that. I think if we sit back and try to pick and choose things that, why do they get to say it and I can't, or why do they get to do this and I can't? I think what we really should be focused on is respect for each other. And if you feel like, if you know that that's gonna disrespect someone or somebody's gonna get offended in some way, then don't do it. If you feel like you can, that's allowed with somebody and they're not gonna get disrespected or it's not gonna be derogatory, they're not gonna get offended, then it's cool. And if you have a question about it, if you're really not sure, then lean towards don't do it. That's kind of how I was brought up by my mom. I don't know why it's it used to be, now it's a black thing and white people can't say that word. I don't know why, but I do know that it's a respect factor that's there and still some offensive things that are there that stems with that word. I don't like when white people say it.
And so let me ask you this.
College basketball players and college athletes be exploited for their athleticism and things like that, but the only thing the media is focusing on is when one person says that word. I mean, it's obviously there's racism
to me, it's just a deflection tactic. As a business person, if we talk about this over there, then we never have to talk about this over here. And over here, you've got an exploitation happening.
I guess I'm not sure how they even relate to each other. I'm not sure how the exploitation of, you have collegiate athletes who are doing this sweat equity thing, and colleges are making money off of them, and a word that's used as in a derogatory fashion, and that's an opinion, I guess, or whatever. I don't know how those two things are related to each other.
I think that, go ahead, Burton.
Like she was saying, the media is focusing on the one topic here, which is a big topic that they're just kind of avoiding altogether.
Oh, so that's just an example, like
For me,
one
that's
thing
the
that the media
example
is
that
talking
I was
about.
using.
Okay, now I understand. Well,
That upsets me because ultimately I pick up the paper and I don't really care, because I think that the issue is, what is the marketplace saying to the, if I could rebrand Black Lives Matter, I would rebrand it Black Lives Have Value. Because at that point, then what the marketplace does is it begins to shift. And ultimately, everybody in this country from after World War II who have any sort of, equity in their home, equity in their life, it happened through the marketplace, because education really took off in the 60s and 70s, and then obviously the cycle of monetization started happening and all the things that come around that, and I won't get lost in that rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, that is what I was trying to tie in, is does that even interest you in terms of who says the N-word and who doesn't? That's what I'm interested in, because it doesn't interest me.
Right. No.
That's right. Is it?
Right. What about this? Yeah. Right.
Whatever the case may be, and I'm with you, but I don't really understand where it relates. But it's a bigger problem when you're saying, hey, this is okay, but this is not, and there's really no rhyme or reason as to why it's not.
Right. So I think that, I think from that particular instance, they're not really related, right? It's like this is a problem. So why are we focusing on this? Is kind of more the thing, right? Like, this shouldn't even matter. We should be focused on a bigger issue, right? From my opinion, and I shared this with Donna a little bit when I read some of the language that was used for tonight in promotion. My initial thoughts, I have a lot of thoughts on, should college athletes be paid, right? Should you just pay the guys, right? If you're wearing Nike, and I got a deal, if I made a Nike deal or whatever, because I'm the University of North Carolina, and Nike gave us $5 million to put that jersey on, put this Nike symbol on your jersey, and you're wearing it, should you get a cut of that, right? I'm selling your jerseys with your number on it, should you get a cut of that kind of thing. Here's my opinion on that. I think that whenever you start paying collegiate athletes, that takes them from an amateur status to a professional status. They're no longer amateur because you're paying them for their skill set, right? And you're no longer just giving them a scholarship or education, that kind of stuff. You're paying them in monetary value. Now, I did have an issue when I heard that there was one football player who was signing napkins, or he was out, people were coming up into him, and he would sign some things or whatever and then sell it to them, right? And so my thought process there was, well, it's his signature. The university doesn't own his signature, so shit, let the kid make some.
The university owns him, because publicity rights are enforced by the state.
Right.
And so when he signs that as a representative of that university, and he makes money, he goes from amateur status to professional status, because the valuation the NCAA has on that is so moderately low. At the end of the day, they own him by the deal that he struck.
Right. But what I'm saying is, it shouldn't be that way, right? It doesn't make sense for it to be that way. So like if I sign this napkin, right? I'm a big time player at the University of Kansas. You see me out, I sign this napkin. I say, hey man, give me $5 and I'll give you my signature or whatever, right? what's the big deal? Why should that be a violation? You know what I mean? From just a common sense standpoint, that's one of the things that I don't understand. Because guess what? If I get hurt, right? If I had an all-star year this year and I got hurt this summer and I'm not even playing next year, guess what? Or if I decide to transfer or I decide to go to, it doesn't. My signature, my name is still my name. My name was my name before I decided to come play for that university.
We have in the blue. Go ahead, you first. Sorry, then the blue, and then this gentleman.
I think it's something of a dichotomy that you have this organization that can make money off of athletes who do not make any money, who are not considered, considered amateurs, they're not professionals. However, there's this large organization that will do a lot of money off of it. I think that should actually be a crime.
It's a crime. It's a fleecing crime. It's a fraud. It's a benign fraud. It's a gentle fraud. We're telling people, go ahead. Oh, yeah. No, what they were saying is you're one of us. Well, I think what felt alien to me was the fact that through one word used in such a derogatory way and then shifted by people who felt comfortable by using the word to build affiliation, but what does it say if behind the word, the person using the word, whether white or black, is making money off of you and not actually treating you as though we are one and the same? Because at the end of the day, that is how we all speak to one another. And so somebody calling me Michelle or Buddy, I have this thing where I call everybody Buddy because I try to desexualize things when I'm in the marketplace. And I did that about, 15 years ago, James, because I gained about 125 pounds. So I didn't have to worry about that anymore. I took that out of the element as a woman when I went to the marketplace. But I can promise you that when I made those cold calls to those guys down in Hilton Head, I had my best 900 voice going. And I would say to them, hey, how you doing today? And by the time we got to the end of the conversation, they wanted to take me to dinner. And I would get down there, and then I was probably 280, 270. I'd get out of the car, and you'd see the guy flinch, and I'd be like, you don't have to take me to dinner anymore. But I do want you to buy this elevator from me. And I would start telling them things. And how I relate this back to the exploitation, the benign fraud that is happening in front of all of us, is that if we don't come up with something that teaches and talks about the marketplace. So let's say there aren't a lot of entrepreneurs who are talking about this right now, but let's say through this organization of Frankly Speaking, people start coming and saying, I had no idea there were one-year contracts. I had no idea that there was a University of Alabama player in 2005 who had a horrible injury when he went into the end zone, and his name starts with a P, and I had that on my notes that I forgot, and I can't remember his name right now. But if you will look this up, because he signed his scholarship, when he got injured in the end zone, as he was leaving the University of Alabama's field, because he had a career-ending injury, he put the number 1 up in the air. And some photographer hired by the University of Alabama and licensed to be on that field took that picture. And that kid got what's called a hardship scholarship. Not very many athletes get what's called hardship scholarships. But because his injury was so gruesome and that iconic photograph started happening, he got a hardship scholarship. So he got to stay at the University of Alabama. But people talked him into, for purposes of he wasn't getting food, He just got paid his scholarship at that time, which was based on the system. And so what happened is he got to the point where he graduated, and he went to the Regions Bank right next to the stadium. Now, he went right next to the stadium. He had been that player. That they caught that picture, everybody wanted to hang, and everybody started bringing in the poster for him to sign. Tyrone Prothros, okay? And so what happened is Tyrone, he decided, man, I'm going to go buy those posters, and I'm going to start signing my name, and I'm going to start making a little bit of money on that picture, right? Makes sense, right? That's a free marketplace. Or wrong. Tyrone signed his publicity rights away when it came to the Association of the University of Alabama, because they own the licensing of the photograph that was taken of him. So he had to get permission from the University of Alabama to sign his name. Now, he owned his signature, so he could sign it, but how much better is it if he can put that photograph and his signature together? The value is in the togetherness, not in him just signing a napkin. The value is in the moment, but he didn't own that moment. And so now his earning potential as a teller at Regions Bank is $9 an hour. The university did not sue him. They sent him a cease and desist letter, is my understanding, in circles. You don't read about that in the major news. You'd have to go out and try to find somebody who's going to tell you that basically this guy got a cease. Can you believe this guy got a cease and desist? Can you? And I'm going to say the F word at some point tonight. I'm going to let you know. It's going to come out.
Good. Is this all right? Good. So I'm a UNC grad, so I appreciate mentioning them, and it's been very frustrating to see what's happened as far as the news goes. But what I was wondering is, I get the frustration with the sense that you get a full scholarship, you get the chance at an education and all of that for the sweat equity, but I also know how much time and it occupies to be a full-time college athlete. Yeah. And I just wondered maybe about your reaction to the thought that if you're an ROTC scholarship at college, you are basically getting a money in advance to be in school for 4 years in theory, and then you are basically promising the government 4 years of commitment after that to be in the military. And that's kind of the trade-off you're making with like a ROTC scholarship or something like that. I wonder, is it reasonable, is it crazy to think that you should do something inverse to that with a college athletic scholarship, where you are basically committing yourself to the sport, and for every year you're in the sport, you're guaranteed a year of educational opportunity after the work time of it's over? Because what I think is unfair about it is that if you're a college football player at Alabama or UTC even, it's not really realistic to expect somebody to be able to do both of those things with full commitment at the same time. Does that make sense? So if you were guaranteed that for every year that you could give your athletic abilities to the school, that you could follow that up if you're not drafted, which is the case for almost everybody. Right. If you're not drafted, then you can go back and get the education part and be fully committed to it, as opposed to it being this sham 10 hours a semester, not really learning anything kind of experience, but instead you know your professional career isn't going to happen at that point, and you might be more interested in actually fully involving yourself in what might avail from that.
So what you're saying, that what that model looks like is, I agreed to come play for North Carolina. For those 4 years or how many years I played for North Carolina, they actually pay me for playing, right? And then after that, I get to go back and receive the education.
I'd love the pay part. The pay part would be great, but I'm more I think a lot of people react to the scholarship as in you're getting a free education and that's pay. I don't necessarily agree with that. But what I'm frustrated by is that we are even creating an illusion that a lot of these athletes are even getting an education.
Or they
Yeah.
have time to get an education.
So you're not only not getting paid, but you're also not really getting an education.
Full advantage of your education,
So,
yeah.
right. So at the very least, I don't understand why we're not talking about ways to make sure that the education part is legit as opposed to this we feel better about ourselves.
Right.
For
So
what's going on.
I think that the education part is definitely legit. So I have two responses to that. The first is you'll hear some of those students who didn't get a scholarship, who went 4 years of school, and now they came out of college and they have real student loan debt, real dollars that they are having to pay back. And so they're looking at the athletes like, dude, cry me a river. North Carolina made some money off of you, but at least you got to come here for free and you have a scholarship. But I have student loan debt that's real money that I'm having to pay back. I paid for my education. They gave it to you for free. You should see that as compensation, right? I went to I've had these conversations before, and so you hear people make that argument. I don't really know how to rebuttal that because student loan debt is real. You have to pay that back for a very long time. The second part of that is, yeah, student athletes, being a student athlete taught me, I think grew me to be a better entrepreneur. And I think because you have to be able to do a lot of things and manage your time really well and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, we get in at 2 a.m. from a game and I've got a 8 o'clock class in the morning, so I'm not going to get much sleep, but I still got to stay focused and be on my game in the classroom because my parents don't think I'm going to the NBA and they don't give a shit if I go, you know what I mean? Like they want my grades to stay, at a certain amount and that kind of, at a certain level, that kind of thing. And so I think that, yeah, that there should be more focus on helping those kids be better student athletes. I think that there should be some focus and attention there.
Just a couple things. I don't know if anybody followed the Northwestern University student who sued to have his football team unionized. And I think at the lower level, it was determined that he could unionize the football team. And then when it went all the way up to the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, they said they couldn't unionize it, which I thought was kind of unfortunate. But my husband played on scholarship at Georgia Tech football. He was an offensive tackle. And then he was drafted in the 6th round by the Kansas City Chiefs. And he played for 3 years in the NFL. He got a degree in electrical engineering at Georgia Tech. But one thing that he told me was that there were other athletes on his team that had a scholarship, had their tuition paid and their room paid and their food paid, but their family couldn't afford to drive up from Florida or from Texas or wherever they were. They couldn't afford to come see their child play. They couldn't pay for the hotel room. They couldn't pay for the food on the road. And if anyone paid that for them, that would be considered an inappropriate payment from someone from the university. And that's very sad. That's where, at the very least, there should be stipends given to families, and maybe even families. The NCAA should allow some consideration for the needs of the family, maybe even like a special scholarship program for the family to allow them to come see their child play. So that was pretty sad. The other thing is, one possibility might be to set up farm teams. Of course, this is sacrilege because the universities and the college system are the farm teams for the NFL. But for people that aren't students, that don't come into a school prepared and ready for college work, and college work is hard. If you're not ready for that, you want to go and try to get into the NFL, maybe there are farm teams, like farm teams for baseball, that could be set
Well, it's
up.
interesting that you bring that up because the reality is that is more of the solution, and I'm just trying to open the dialogue of why this happens and why athletes have to be treated as though they are indentured servants, why there's some mechanism there that says you are owned while you're under our roof. But what's interesting about that, and I don't know the answer to this, and I'd love for somebody to tell me the answer to this, is why Major League Baseball has farm leagues. They have private leagues for guys to enter those leagues and make enough money to possibly get married, start a family, start a business. I mean, as I said, you can't start a business in this country, and I got lucky. Somebody wrote me a check or called Pioneer Bank, and then what happened down at Pioneer Bank is somebody paid all my bad checks that I wrote to be in business, because that would allow me an opportunity to have short-term lending, because at that time there wasn't even credit cards that gave you the kind of money I needed. So the interesting thing about that is it's a fascinating question as to why everything has to be the way it was, and therefore it has to be the way it is, and therefore it has to be the way it's going to be.
One more thing. White people never ever say the N-word. I don't care if you are in a, okay, don't say it. Yeah, okay.
I agree. I've got a question. I agree with that. I don't think there's any reason ever somebody needs to say that word, a white person, absolutely. But my question is, I have a 10-year-old boy. He's a great student. He's a great athlete. I know people right now, their kids are in college on scholarship. Some of them are combined academic, athletic, most of them athletic. They starve. They don't have any money to eat. Now, let's go back. They got their college paid for. Some of them get the food, they get the room. Some of them don't. So that's my first concern. If you're on a scholarship, the last thing a parent should have to worry about is that you don't have food, parking, all these other costs. But the second part of it, I want to go back to it, and I know we have a couple of attorneys in the room, but why in the world, if my kid goes on a scholarship, I will have probably 2 attorneys there. So I'm just curious, how in the world do you sit down? I see all the pictures on the internet where all these people are signing, these young high school graduates are signing and going away on scholarship, but you don't ever see attorneys in the room. Why would that be? I'm curious from you two what you think, but is that even legal? Surely to God somebody's thought about that. I mean, it's a legal binding contract.
I never think anyone should sign a contract unless they have nothing to lose. So it must be that the people signing those contracts think to themselves,
That's half the people in America.
I'm poor. I have nothing to lose. So I'll just sign anything anybody puts in front of them. But here's the funny thing is, when somebody actually posts this on Facebook, because that's the calling, and you can post it on the Urban Long site because God knows I've been writing about this, post your scholarship from the University of Alabama. Post your scholarship paperwork from the University of... Let's see if it is as detailed as what I would see in a business transaction. Because again, a business contract has warrants. It has expectations of both parties. And so we test everything in this country when it's publicly financed, but do we test that these schools are educating these people when they leave? I mean, I don't know, James. You tell me. If somebody gets an injury and they are unfortunate enough to have a hardship scholarship, and so they can't afford to be at the University of... I mean, let's pick another SEC school. I'm not big on any of them from the standpoint of what they do in the understanding, but let's just pick the University of Florida. Because their retention rate at the University of Florida is really high, right? So UTC's retention rate for students alone is moderately low. So if you go to UTC, the likelihood of you going a second year is low. But let's just pick the University of Florida, which has a great retention rate. Do they self-govern? Does the NCAA go out and test these athletes that have been there for a year to see if they have gotten any education? Because to enter that school, and I don't mind who knows this, I used to hide this fact. I mean, I let 2 people cheat off of me on the ACT when I was in high school because they couldn't get higher than a 12. And I was like, y'all come on now, we're going to get this done. Y'all have to go to college. That's the goal here, right? So I'm passing them the ball on the court. I'm going to pass them the ball on the educational level. And I'm very proud of that. And both of them graduated from college. And both of them probably don't give a damn what I have to say right now because they've got families and kids and they're playing high school ball. But for me, I think that there needs to be some sort of testing that happens on these levels where you've got money involved. We test everything in this country. Why not test these institutions by testing these kids? I mean, I know that they're probably, if somebody is listening to that, they're going, what is this lady talking about? She wants me to take one more test? But the self-protection of not getting exploited is in the test, right? Because if there's money involved and there's greed involved and the greed is rampant, which that's what it is, and the Bible says it's not money that's the problem, it's the love of money that's the problem. And if we lose sight of all of that, at that point, we are all losers. There is not a winner among us. Because at the end of the day, what that tells me is nobody cares whether that deal was righteous in the fact that somebody cared, again, that student athlete was educated as part of the deal and gives them a chance at a life outside of that arena.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. You know, I haven't spent much time looking into like the contractual standpoint of that transaction between, you know, colleges and their athletes. I would like to go back to one thing that you said, Donna, about the student athletes not being able to afford things outside of food, right? So what you'll have is, all right, and I can speak from experience on this, I'm in practice all day, been in class all day, or games all day and practice all day and that kind of stuff. A lot of my friends who didn't play sports, they got part-time jobs, right? They would go to class and have part-time jobs, and that's how they would go to the movies or go out to eat or things of that nature. Well, think about all the kids who are from poverty, and then they come up there and they're in class all day. As soon as they got out of class, they go to practice and that kind of stuff. They want to go to the movies too. And so I first became an entrepreneur in college because I got tired of calling my mom and dad every weekend saying, hey, will you send me some money? Hey, will you send me some money? Hey, because I wanted to go to the movies. I wanted to go out to eat, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. They don't have that luxury. And so it would be great if there was some type of stipend, at least that, you know, livable stipend or whatever you want to call it, that was built in with that scholarship so they could live and be a human outside of, you know what I mean, just being a
Because
athlete.
I think it goes back to that point right there. A parent, when you're signing a contract, I should know that my kid is going to have not only his education, he's going to be fed, he's going to have those key essentials. And to me, they're looking out for themselves versus the student athlete when I've got to worry about my kid having money. That's why legal representation, I think, needs to be there, because you're looking out to make sure they're going to deliver on their athleticism, but are you making sure that they're going to make sure my kid is fed, that he or she has everything they need?
Yeah.
They're only looking out for themselves.
So, I mean, basically, Winston Churchill said the left gives you the tools, the right gives you the ladder, right? And so when I see the D on the national pulpit, I see the tools, right? They're talking about education, they're talking about this. And when I see the R, depending on who you're asking, I see the ladder, right? But at the end of the day, why is it that everyone, including black people, think that it's okay for the deal to be education for sweat equity, and it's okay that the university system and the NCAA can make $1.2 billion in card cash, yet at the end of the day, I still can't find somebody that explains to me why that's okay, because what comes on the backside of that is, well, they don't take advantage of the system that is there for them. They don't go to class, but the gentleman who just stood up that went to the University of North Carolina said that people are burning through their currency. Currency right now for me is time. And so at that point, they don't have any time. You didn't have time, or I don't even know, were you allowed to get a part-time job even at an NAIA school? Were you allowed to make money outside of there? I don't know.
So you can, I mean, you can get a part-time job, but you don't have the time to get a part-time job.
Oh, you don't have the time.
I mean, there's just not enough hours in a day for you. I mean, if I get out of practice at 6, 7, and I go home and shower and all that kind of stuff, even get ready for work, where am I going to work at from 8 p.m. until midnight? I can't work in the mall. Like, where are you going to work? And
Well, who fed you when you got in at 2 a.m.? Because I know the cafeteria wasn't open.
They would have food for us. So
they would. Okay.
Yeah, we would eat on the bus. So like after the games, we'd be like, all right, where y'all want to eat? We
Oh,
would go to,
okay.
wherever it is or whatever, and we would eat our food on the bus and that.
I
kind of
got
stuff.
you.
Yeah. So they always made sure that we were fed. It was just the extracurricular stuff, the miscellaneous things that came up. My car is down. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to get my car fixed and that kind of stuff so I can just get around? Those are things that you're just going to have to call and ask your parents for. But if your parents are broke, then, what do you do? So I started selling shoes when I was in college. This is illegal, but I can admit it now because I think I'll be cleared for it. I would order shoes online. I would stay up until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because over in China, that the time difference or whatever. And I would have a book that I would take around campus because in West Virginia, they had one little rinky-dink Foot Locker. They never had the cool Jordans or Air Force Ones and that kind of stuff. Anyway, people would let me know what shoes they wanted. I would order the shoes from China. The shoes would come in the mail. I would buy the shoes for $35 and then sell them for $70 or whatever, 40, buy them for 40, sell them for $70. And so that's how I stopped asking my parents for money. I just stayed up late.
You created your own marketplace.
Yeah. I just did what I had to do because I got tired of, asking my parents and I got tired of going without. So, I just
I wonder if
started
any of
after
these athletes ever, this isn't probably anything you can answer, but I wonder if these athletes ever take their free shoes and put them on eBay and get a buddy to put that on there so they, and then,
they do.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
I
same with the
wonder what
signature.
effect that has on their soul, because that's so like, when you do something wrong and you're taught right from wrong, and then somebody tells you that's wrong, then it probably feels bad, but you got to eat, and if you want to live, and I think that's what I was trying to correlate with the N-word is that the message I'm getting is don't use the word white people and black people, use it as much as you can, because at the end of the day, that gives us you or me and I am you, and I can market to you. Yeah. So the first thing that I ever do when I walk into a room and I'm going to sell you something, I'm going to make you feel like you're me. That's the first thing I'm going to do. We're going to have an affiliation, and depending on what the guy looked like, because 90% of the business I've done over the years has been a guy, it depends on whether I'm going to pick affliction. Oh, Lord, my bunions are hurting me today. So I'm going to recognize in that person what I need to get them to do to associate themselves with me. And I think that's the root of this problem. I think that most people do not understand, because most of these athletes are black. And so there's no way, and that's why I'm going to bring it full circle for you. That's why I brought up the N-word and why it made me feel comfortable that I was being called that, because I got that. Right. But at the end of the day, what I think it does to the marketplace is it makes people not give a shit, because that's on them. That's not on us. And then through that division, we can just exploit it all day long, right? And then nobody has a problem with the exploitation because it's an acceptable fraud. Because nobody knows.
Because it just is what it, right? It's just been like that for so long. And I don't know the solution, to be honest. I mean, I know that people have brought this up before, and I think it just kind of falls on deaf ears. And I don't know the solution to change it and make it, make it better, because I'm a problem and solution guy, and I don't have a solution on how to fix it. I think, maybe if we just continue to make enough noise about it, maybe some things will change.
We're going to make some noise, James.
There we go.
Because here you go. I'm going to go out there and make a little bit more money, and I'm going to sell something, and we're going to have things that we're going to talk about. We're going to invite people, and if they don't show up, we're going to still talk about them.
That's right.
And we're going to see if we can actually get people to think.
Yeah.
And we can see if we can actually get people to understand that when you tell people that they can't do something,
Yeah.
then you lower the value of their expectation in themselves. So I got more confidence the more I sold, right? I knew that I was good at this because people gave me money and trusted me to do something. And so what I'm trying to say is there is a level of expectation in this country and we haven't even touched on the marketplace when it comes to women, because I've heard one of the reasons why you don't pay the athletes is because they redistribute the wealth because of Title IX. If Title IX wasn't there, then they wouldn't have to make all that money. And the women's sports don't make as much money as the male sports. But here's the interesting thing. If we could get the deal and we could open up the pond, then maybe more fishes and more bait and more poles start to happen, and everybody benefits from that. Black, white, male, female, young, some people old. And at that point, James, that's why I invited you here. So this is our initial dialogue, and I just appreciate you coming.
I'm glad I came. Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you guys for having me for sure, and I hope you guys enjoy
Thank you all for coming.
participating.
And then ultimately, I hope that we have a Wednesday in October, and maybe that'll be at the Glass Street or the Glass House Street building that I bought, because one of the things that I talk about is if the college athlete could make some money, maybe they redistribute that money in investment in their communities of isolation, because nobody wants to lend any money over there. Nobody certainly wants to give as much money as maybe they could.
Hello.
That's right.
Okay, I want to thank, before we do go, though, I want to say thank you to the Camp House.
Thank
All
you,
right?
Camp House.
Thank you, Camp House. We are going to be doing Frankly Speaking, but here's what I need everyone in this room to do. Go to our Facebook page tonight, and I need you to make a comment, something about what you've heard tonight. Okay, James, I want to say thank you. Michele, this is your time. Time is the most precious thing you can give, so I know Michele panicked a little bit about this tonight, but I think it went
I was a
well.
little bit nervous, but let
It went
Brad-
great. Go right ahead.
just like to say, would we be having the same conversation if we were discussing white, Asian American athletes? The fact of the matter is, the talent pool that is predominantly African American because they are phenomenal athletes. It's not a matter of white or black, but it just so happens to be that they're pulling from a talent pool that is from a lesser socioeconomic status. So it throws up this red flag. If we're exploiting these guys, based on color because it's easy to pinpoint. But if you have all these five-star athletes that are Caucasian, is there the same concern? Still being exploited.
Well,
I was at the University of Georgia. I tutored a lot of guys who are now in the NFL. They were fed extremely well. I agree with your point that it should be a democratic mindset that, yeah, you can do well if you're on campus. I mean, the guys should be paid to go on dates.
exactly.
Your cell phone, and who gives a shit what your jersey number is if you're not out there performing, right? Like, nobody cares about your signature on your napkin if you're not out there kicking ass.
Right.
So, why aren't we trying to find out ways to say, okay, you're Todd Gurley, you're signing these autographs, which no one would care about if you weren't a phenomenal athlete, and could we approach it as, okay, you get up $200 to $500 stipend fees, and we're going to take all the proceeds from your jersey sales, and we're going to put it in a trust. So if you tear your ACL and you get out of high, you graduate college, we're going to give you that money because your jersey wouldn't have been worth anything had you not performed on the field. However, if you choose to leave earlier than your 4-year contract scholarship dictates you play for, you forfeit that money because then I'll use the University of Georgia as an example, you have taken away from the institution because you're not paying the 4 years you signed up.
Well, they have a song for that. It's called I Owe My Soul to the Company Store. The coal mines did that. So ultimately, that is something that is very prevalent in poor coal mine communities. They would set aside, but then they'd sell the deal on the other side. But let me tell you, Brad, here's the thing. My only thing I want to leave with tonight is the issue isn't black or white, it's greed. The issue is greed. I got you.
Yeah, I think those phenomenal student athletes just so happen to be black, right? For the most part in football and basketball, because those are the most popular collegiate sports. I think that if they were white, then we would still be talking about it as well, because it is a green thing. At the same time, you've got people making a lot of money off people's talent, and you're not paying them for it. As far as from a monetary standpoint, or they're not seeing any of the proceeds that you're reaping or the benefits that you're reaping off of their hard work. But I mean, you can go round
But
and round
people
about
jumped
that.
all over me on, or some people did on Facebook for even bringing up the race issue. And I said to them, it just seems disingenuous when 96% of the people are black and
That are
4% of
athletes,
them.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's what I would say to someone who's standing in front of me, is this could be you. If you had talent, it could be exploited, because the system is exploiting regardless of what color it is.
Yep.
And so I think we just want to say, and I hope James will join me again to continue this discussion.
Yeah, this was fun.
And then we'll see what happens. And we maybe do it at the Urban Lawn, because I don't know if I'll have the Glass Street done. So I don't know if you've been to the Urban Lawn, but I'll invite you there, and we'll sit there and see how many people we can get to show up, and see how many people listen to the podcast, and we'll see what happens.
All right, very cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys
Thank you.
again. Yeah, no problem.